Hello, beautiful souls. I'm so happy to be back and to have so many new things to share with you all. First off, if you just found me, hey, my name's April. I'm the nerdy but average witch behind the mic here on the podcast. This average witch invites you to listen along, check out my social media pages, follow and subscribe in all of the places. If you've followed me over from A Witchful Journey, hi. I've missed you all, I love you all, and thank you so much for being supportive while I hung out in my chrysalis, trying to make things even better for you. You guys are great, and I really appreciate your patience through all of this. It's certainly been an adventure, and a long time coming. At least, that's what it feels like to me. I'm not sure about you guys. So, what info have I got for you? Well, you've already gotten a taste of the intro music. I did a full revamp on that, tossed out the AI-generated junk, because I wasn't too fond of it anyway, and fuck AI. And what you just heard, a little bit ago, was done by me. I am not a musician by any stretch of the imagination, so when I tell you this was the hardest part for me, I really wish I was kidding. Second thing that I've got for you is a Substack. You can find it at thisaveragewitch.substack.com. There isn't a ton on there at the moment since I've been more focused on getting the podcast episodes going and making sure that my wings are fully developed before I tried flying here. And to be totally honest, I'm still working on figuring out how exactly Substack works from, the writer's side of it. Anyway, in my Substack, you can follow me and sign up for the free subscription. There will also be a paid version too, pretty soon, where you can get access to even more content. Stuff like mini episodes, probably the occasional video, if I can get my shit together enough to pull that off, and extra blog posts that won't be available anywhere else. The third thing is seasons. Instead of bi-weekly releases of episodes, I'm doing themed seasons. Each season will consist of 16 episodes to be released weekly. That means that you'll get about 4 months of a season before a 3-month or 12-week break where everything except the podcast episodes will continue. After 3 months, another season will begin. This will allow for me to not only have a little bit of family time, but also to prepare for the next season. And it'll allow you to get caught up on episodes or re-listen to episodes that you really enjoyed. And lastly, why did I want to go forward with the transformation? So this is a question that has been posed to me a couple of times since I announced that I would be making the switch. I don't know if I've actually told you guys my reasons behind it. So as you guys know, I'm always on a quest to learn as much as I can about everything. And I want to share that stuff with you. But I also do much more than research and studying. The craft is very much experiential and very much a lifestyle. And I want to share that part with you too. But I'm also, just your average person. And I want that to be reflected in the work that I do for you guys. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not here to present a flawless aesthetic or convince you that only certain people are allowed to be witches. That would be gatekeeping, and I hate that. I'm just here as this real-life, average witchy human. So, what will we talk about in this podcast and in my Substack? Well, we'll still be exploring all things witchy, supernatural, spooky, and spiritual. I'm a little wild, sometimes spicy, and most probably neurodivergent, and those bits of who I am will undoubtedly come out as I share accounts of my own personal experiences with the supernatural, the spooky, the spiritual, and in my craft. I'll share information that I've learned over the course of 20 plus years, as well as anything new that I learn along the way, because no matter how experienced we think we are, there are always new things to learn. I'll tell you the occasional spooky story, or a bit of folklore and mythology. We'll discuss deities, spirits, and various otherworldly beings and creatures. We'll discuss various ways of practicing the craft, and hopefully have an occasional guest. We'll discuss some related history, the various belief systems, societal norms, and taboos. We'll talk herbs, candles, crystals, elements, aesthetics, the whimsical, the dark, and so much more. But most importantly, we'll be awakening our magic. And maybe even getting a little wilder and a little witchier. To get us started here for Season 1, I want to talk about rituals to honor loved ones that have passed. Now, you'd think I'd save this for some time closer to Samhain, because there's a lot of ritual that can be done at Samhain, or Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, in order to honor loved ones who've passed. And that's a great time to honor them, because that's a time when the veil between us and the spirit realm is thin. But what about when we're in the moment? What about when we feel the need to do something to honor a loved one who recently passed? Many of us would choose not to wait until Samhain to honor them, right? We want to be able to do something regardless of what time of the year it is. And just a heads up, I'm going to talk a little bit about grief today, because that's when we really feel the need to do something to honor their spirit and remember their life. Everyone has experienced the loss of a loved one, whether that's a deeply loved pet, a parent, a grandparent, a sibling, a child, a friend, or a partner. And everyone goes through the stages of grief differently. It's not even a linear experience. There can be loops that go back to stages you've already experienced. There can be multiple stages being experienced at once. Or some of the stages may take up less time or space and emotion than other stages. The point of doing a ritual to honor the passing of a loved one is to honor them. But it's also to acknowledge our feelings towards that person and to honor that as well. In a mundane sense, the rituals are generally symbolic activities that help us, often along with friends and family. But it's to help us express our thoughts and our feelings related to the loved one and their physical absence. Now, that isn't to say that these types of rituals are selfish. They aren't. I can tell you from experience that your loved one knows when you're doing a ritual in their honor. And sometimes they'll even join you for that ritual. So what can we do? A ritual of this kind doesn't have to be formal or elaborate. It can be perfectly simple or non-traditional. Let's say it's been a few days or a few weeks since your loved one passed away. Maybe you weren't able to attend their funeral for whatever reason, or there's a day coming up that was special to them. What can you do to remember them? First option is writing a letter. If there are things that you wanted to say to them but didn't have the chance to, you can write them a letter. Include everything that you want to tell them. You can make it as long or as short as you need. You can write what's on your mind, how much you miss them, your favorite memory of them, whatever you feel is needed. There are 3 things that you can do once the letter's finished. Choose the one that feels right to you. You can either fold it up and burn it, using the fire and smoke as your spirit mail delivery system. You can bury it, releasing the letter and the words back to the earth as kind of an acceptance and letting go. Or you can keep your letter in a memory box, along with things like photographs, small items, anything that reminds you of your loved one. If you want something close by that can be kind of a daily comfort, you can find a small, tangible item that helps you feel close to your loved one. These are called remembrance items. It can be something that they owned, like jewelry, an article of clothing, or an accessory like a hat, or maybe a watch. It can be something that they liked in life. If they loved the ocean, then maybe a seashell or a sand dollar. If they loved gardening, then maybe a small vial of the dirt from their garden. You could also use a small vial to hold dried petals of their favorite flower. If they had something that they said all the time that was unique to them, or that instantly reminds you of them when you hear it, write that down on a small slip of paper and put it into the vial, with the words facing out so you can read it whenever you need to. Some people even carry a tiny amount of their loved one's ashes in a special permanently sealed decorative vial. You can host their favorite meal. When you cook their favorite meal, you're taking time to infuse the meal with the intention and energy of honoring that loved one. If you want, you can invite friends and family to partake in the meal. Inviting friends and family is a great way to gather and have conversations and share memories. And maybe hear some memories that you never would have heard otherwise. If you'd like, you can also set a place at the table for the loved one who passed. If you do, then maybe consider leaving a plate for them as well, and putting a little food on the plate. Now, if you have friends and family joining this meal, setting expectations with them beforehand about your plans for setting out a plate and whether or not there will be food on that plate will be important. Some people can have a negative reaction to something like that if they're not prepared for it, because they're joining this meal probably with some of their own grief surrounding this person. And that's something that should also be respected. It may even be helpful in those cases to explain that the food in that place setting, if you do set out specifically for the deceased loved one, isn't meant to be physically eaten. The spirit of the loved one would consume the energy or essence of the food, leaving the physical part behind. At the end of the meal, properly dispose of the food that was set out for your deceased loved one. Maybe put it in the compost or something. If your loved one was a person of many hobbies or had various small trinket collections, and you don't feel right about simply getting rid of those things, you can invite family and some close friends of the deceased loved one and host a giveaway. Encourage the sharing of memories that are triggered by the items. And encourage each person to choose one item to take home. One little small note here, though. This ritual may or may not stem from part of a Lakota funeral tradition. They do hold a giveaway of items that belonged to the deceased, and within their traditions, it's more about sharing the belongings back into the community. A way to show that generosity is more important than possessions. And this generally takes place along with the rest of the funeral rites and practices within the first few days after the person's passing. You can light a candle. This one can be perfectly simple, or it can be beautifully intricate. Lighting a candle for a deceased loved one is very common, and doesn't always have to just be at a vigil. You can light a candle on the anniversary of their passing, on their birthday, on any date that they considered to be special, or even if you're having a particularly painful day of grief. It can be very soothing to sit and meditate with a candle on those days. You can use a scented one that gives off their favorite scent. You can set some stones around the candle. Those can either be ones that they really liked, or in colors that they liked, or you can use ones that are associated with easing grief. I'll get into crystal associations later in the episode. You can create some art in their memory. This can be anything like using some of their clothes to make some small pillows or squares for a quilt, or drawing or painting a picture of them. You can write a poem about them, or create a small book that holds little stories about them. You can do a painted rock garden in their memory, or pick a couple of their unfinished projects to complete. Another little ritual you can do is setting up an altar. Altars are a beautiful way to honor a lost loved one and allow for spirit communication with them. Adorn the altar with photos, or their favorite things, or things that were important to them. Use their favorite flowers, awards they received in their lifetime, candles in their favorite scents, ribbons in their favorite colors, something linked to their favorite hobby, maybe their favorite book, jewelry that was special to them. Whatever feels right to you and works within the space that you have. You can plant some trees or native flowers in their honor if you have the space and the land to do so. You can even place a bench out by the tree or among the flowers so that you can go and sit and be close to them when you need to. You can host a bonfire, invite friends and family, hang out pieces of paper for everyone to write a small message on, and take turns tossing the messages into the bonfire. Along a similar vein, you can release notes into the water. These notes can either be written on rice paper, which is meant to dissolve into the water, or you can carefully write small notes on leaves with some eco-friendly ink and release those instead. There are other releasing ceremonies that can be held as well. Make sure to check with your local agencies, though, about what you're legally allowed to release in your area. And make sure it's not going to harm the environment. Try not to use balloons, even if it says that it's biodegradable. They can strangle birds and sea turtles can choke on them. Even if you live a long way from a large body of water, those balloons can travel a very long distance before gravity brings them back down to Earth. Lanterns can also be kind of dangerous because they can start wildfires when they finally land. Instead, try using a native species of butterfly or blowing bubbles made from some eco-friendly soap. You can also release flower petals into the water or have everyone take tiny little boats made out of leaves, bark, and twigs and release those. You can volunteer for a cause that impacted your loved one's life, or maybe it was something that they were passionate about. If cancer took them, you can volunteer to drive cancer patients to their treatments. Maybe see if there's a way to volunteer at your local hospital. If they loved animals, find an animal shelter that you could volunteer at. Maybe your loved one was all about helping people. You can volunteer at a soup kitchen or a food bank, or delivering food to senior citizens who have trouble leaving their homes. If your loved one was an outdoors person, see if there's a volunteer opportunity in your area to help maintain hiking trails or cleaning up trash along the roadside or in the waterways. There's so many programs out there that can help you find volunteer positions that fit. And 2 other little rituals that you can do to honor your loved one. You can play their favorite song or album and sit and listen to it and maybe even try to feel how they felt about that album or that song. Or you could try learning, or just, if you already know it, just do one of their favorite hobbies or activities. Why don't we go over some herbs, crystals, and incense that are often associated with honoring the passing of a loved one. You absolutely don't have to use any of these. I just love using herbs and incense, and if I have a crystal for something, I'm going to use it if it feels right. In my personal experience, their energy helps to enhance the rituals. So for herbs and incense, we have rosemary for remembrance, the enduring nature of the soul. It helps to mask odors and to protect the spirit of the deceased one on their journey to the other world. We have mugwort, associated with the psyche and with dreams, can help relieve depression and anxiety, helps keep unwanted spirits away from the grieving family, can act as the bridge between the physical and spiritual realms to allow for ancestor communication. We have pomegranate, the fruit of the dead, associated with Persephone and the underworld in ancient Greek mythology. It's the symbol of resurrection, the continuity of life, and rebirth. We have apples, associated with immortality, the cyclical nature of life, considered food for the dead in Slavic folklore. When used as an incense and combined with copal or frankincense, it can be used in spirit communication. We have frankincense, enhances one's spirituality, aids in meditation, used to purify sacred spaces, definitely helps mask odors, and assists the spirit of the deceased on their journey to the afterlife, or otherworld, or Summerland, or whatever you want to call that realm. We have Palo Santo, which means holy wood. It's said to help spirits transition into the spirit realm, helps dispel negative energies and create a peaceful space for mourners and spirits, helps to open a communication with ancestors and departed loved ones, and helps ease grief and replace it with healing and restorative energy. Then we have rose, which represents the love that the living have for the deceased one. It helps to soothe the heart from grief and guilt, and it can act as a gentle grounding tool for mourners and helps ease tension. Then we have myrrh, which was originally used in funeral rites for its preservative and deodorizing properties. Myrrh now represents a union with the divine. It helps safely guide spirits to the spirit realm and allows for mourners and spirits to find peace. It's also associated with protection, healing, and purification. And then we have Nagchampa, or Nagchampa, something like that. Either way, this is one of my favorite ones. It's primarily used for grounding and concentration, but it also helps to carry messages from mourners to the spirit realm. And it helps to chase away unease and create a calm, tranquil environment, perfect for helping the living process grief. And then we have Copal. It's used to clear a sacred space and honor the deceased. It can be used as an offering to the divine, and can be used as a spiritual beacon to guide your deceased loved one to you when attempting to engage in spirit communication. And it's also great to use when wanting to achieve a deep meditative state. For crystals, we have rose quartz, which helps to heal a broken heart and let go of pain. It's got a gentle but peaceful energy. We have amethyst, which absorbs negative energy, alleviates sadness, and has a soothing energy to it. Then we have moonstone, associated with calm and grounding energy to help through all the stages of grief. We have howlite, which helps to calm the mind and bring inner peace. There's clear quartz, which cleanses the mind, body, and spirit, and enhances the effect of other crystals. We've got lepidolite, associated with balance, peace of mind, and stress relief. Apache tears, one of my favorite ones, which lends support during times of grief and sorrow and helps to accept and release the pain of loss. Then we have chrysoprase. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Anyway, it's considered to be a heart healer and connects you directly to divine love in times of heartache and helps to release toxic emotions. And lastly, we have mookaite jasper. Mookaite? I honestly don't know how to pronounce that one. I did not look that up. My bad. It's associated with rejuvenation, grounding, and healing. Also provides comfort and stability in times of grief and major life transitions. I really need to learn how to pronounce that because it is one of my absolute favorite stones. For miscellaneous items that are used during ritual, whether it's just a simple ritual or a complicated one, there's white cloth, which symbolizes peace, purity in life and death, spiritual rebirth, and the untethering from earthly possessions. There's violet cloth, which signifies spiritual transition and mourning. And then there's black candles, which symbolize the unknown and the transition of the soul. And it helps to absorb grief and protect the spirit of the dead on their journey to the afterlife / otherworld / Summerland. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about pagan and Wiccan funeral rites in terms of the actual funeral. I know there's many different paths, and not everyone calls themselves pagan or Wiccan, but those terms are generally what these rites that I'm about to talk about fall under if you were talking to a funeral director at a funeral home. So I apologize if anyone feels particularly left out because you don't consider yourself pagan or Wiccan. I'm just going by the umbrella term that most funeral homes would classify these rites under. Generally speaking, pagan and Wiccan funeral rituals are not conventional funeral rituals. Conventional funerals tend to target the mourning and the loss. and are more focused on the people who attend, while pagan and Wiccan rituals are more about honoring the deceased, easing their transition into the afterlife, and celebrating the positive impacts that they had in life. And it's also remembering and being grateful for the life that they lived. Pagan and Wiccan funerals tend to be much more intimately connected to nature and aren't viewed as a definitive end, but rather just a transition. Death is seen as a natural phase of life. Everything that lives eventually dies, and in that death, something is born or can grow and have life. It's a cycle. The physical body gets returned to the earth to help nourish the next bit of life. And the spiritual body, or the soul, whatever you want to call it, can take many different routes. Most of them go to the afterlife to be reincarnated, or they linger in the earthly plane and act as spirit guides or ancestor energy. This view on life and death doesn't mean that pagans and Wiccans and everyone else who falls under that umbrella don't grieve. Of course we do. We're human. It's just that in most cases, grief is handled differently than what's considered to be conventional. There's no expectation that someone should be immobilized by their grief. I mean, sure, it happens. Like, you are grieving so much that, and in pain so much that you can't even get out of bed after losing someone so close to you. But not everybody experiences that. There's no expectation that that should be the case. And there's no expectation that someone will act happy and normal either. Like, you can't expect somebody to compartmentalize. So there's no expectation about either end of that spectrum of grief. Just because death is a natural part of the cycle of life, it doesn't mean that emotions can be ignored. Instead, there's an emphasis and encouragement around being honest about how you're feeling, recognizing and honoring how you felt about the loved one, and honoring the emotions that come up rather than pushing them aside. These funeral rituals differ in other ways as well. There's no set singular ritual. It's highly personalized to the path and the traditions of the deceased and their family, and whatever their wishes are. It's generally nature-centric, with the majority of the rites and rituals taking place outdoors in a quiet, natural setting. There's no formal clergy, but there may or may not be a high priestess or a high priest, or some sort of spiritual leader that may be present and conducting a ritual. They're there to lead in any chants, blessings, and any guided meditations, as well as providing spiritual support for the family and helping direct the spirit of the deceased toward peace and renewal. Friends and family aren't just attendees. They're generally active participants in the rituals that are performed. Often the elements, earth, air, fire, and water, are incorporated into these rituals, and some traditions include what's called a great rite, or a crossing ritual, where elements and divine forces are invoked in order to help ease the transition into the afterlife. And these rituals can involve water purification, a fire cleansing, or anointing the body with sacred oils. Some of these rituals may involve casting a sacred circle around the area where the funeral ceremony will take place, and this is done with either an athame, or a ritual knife, salt, or blessed water. The area within the circle is then cleansed of negative energy, and prayers and or chants can be spoken to invite spirit guides, deities, whoever, as well as the directions or the elements to help with balance and harmony. Earth for stability and grounding, air for wisdom and knowledge, fire for transformation and passion, and water for emotion and intuition. Friends and family can take turns sharing memories, personal poems, and blessings. And often the sacred circle also contains candles, sometimes incense, offerings like flowers and herbs and other natural symbolic objects that can be removed from the area. Practitioners often choose to have a green burial or a natural cremation process along with a funeral ritual, where the remains are returned to the earth in some way. Green burials generally don't include embalming fluid, or if they do, they're fluids that are much more eco-friendly and not formaldehyde-based. They require a smaller space in the ground than a conventional burial, and the use of biodegradable caskets or a shroud made of natural fibers. The caskets are generally made of unfinished pine, wicker, or bamboo, and part of the reason that they require a smaller space in the ground is because they don't get put into a concrete vault within the ground. The shrouds are typically either cotton or wool, and there are 3 types of cemeteries that may be available depending on the area where you live. There's the hybrid cemetery, a natural cemetery, or a conservation cemetery. Now, natural cremation processes, such as natural organic reduction and water cremation, are more eco-friendly alternatives to the conventional cremation process, and the remains can still be returned to the family in a biodegradable urn or as an ash that's rich in nutrients that can be reintroduced to the soil or the waterways. Some practitioners will even choose to have their ashes or composted remains mixed in with organic seed starter soil. Certain states only allow certain options for various reasons, so if you're preferring any of these funeral options, check with your local area to see what's legal first. So I'm going to close this with some upcoming stuff. The first thing is next week. I think it's next week already, August 3rd. I'm going to be heading up north to this magical little flower farm for an event with my friend Tiffany. Her place is called Magic Moments Flower Farm, and Tiffany and I will be teaching a small group of peeps about some flower magic, as well as doing a little crafting with some flowers from her farm. And I'll be doing a reading during our time, and I think we're also planning on closing the night out with doing a little bit of howling at the moon. I'm so freaking excited. I'll do my best to snag some photos for you, maybe a little video to share, if I remember. Hopefully I remember. Anyway, Magic Moments Flower Farm. Check out their page, her page, and if you are in the area and are interested in learning some flower magic and making some flower crafts on Monday, August 3rd, RSVP to Tiffany's email, which, hold on, I gotta find it. magicmomentsfarmvt@gmail.com. RSVP there. And lastly, later this week, my very first blog post for paid subscribers will be hitting the Substack, as long as I can get paid subscriptions ironed out. And then at the end of this week, I'll also have a little Lammas or Lugnasa post on there as well for everyone to check out. To keep yourself in the circle, follow, subscribe, sign up to all of the places where you can find me. I am on Facebook, This Average Witch, on Instagram, @ThisAverageWitch, on BlueSky, @thisAverageWitch.bsky, on YouTube, @ThisAverageWitch, on Substack, @ThisAverageWitch, or you can just email me, thisaveragewitch@gmail.com. And if you'd be so kind, like, share, give me a lovely rating where possible, leave a comment, give me a shiny review. All of that helps in more ways than you can possibly imagine. Get a little wilder and a little witchier each week with me as we talk about all things witchy, spiritual, spooky, and supernatural. Let's awaken our magic. Much love to you all, and I'll catch you next week.